Hey folks, I wanted to give you a behind the scenes look at what goes into making a tutorial like the simple EQ or my new course, the simple multiband compressor. So I'm going to kind of show you what the process is and what goes into making one of these tutorials. As a quick note, let me put this in a different window, pull this up over here. As a quick note, I'll pull this right here. If I go over to the YouTube channel for FreeCodeCamp, we can see that the simple EQ video that I made produced 334,000 views, which is pretty awesome from 4 months ago. It's one of their top videos on C++, and it's also one of the top videos for the Juice framework, which is really cool. So I'm pretty proud of that. So I am going to show what goes into making a tutorial like that, and then I'm also going to basically make one of the, I'm going to just go through the process of creating part of the script. I'm going to try to keep this kind of short, but you know, the only way to actually do this stuff is to just like invest the time. Anyway, here we go. So basically the way a tutorial like simple EQ comes about is the first thing I develop is the actual plugin itself that is going to get used in the full course, like the actual big course. So first I develop this thing, and this takes a few months to make. So if I go over to Fork and we take a look at Project 11's repository, that's down here, Project 11. We can see that I started this project way back in January of 2021. And then you can see all my branching and whatnot, figuring out DSP, add mid-side processing, input and output meters. Right, we make it all the way to about April. Dual mono, bypass buttons, restructure bypass. And then kind of around here is where I ended up saying, okay, cool, this is going to be the release for this. And here is where I'm going to start making the simple EQ. So I can go to that. And the way this starts is first I prototype the simple version, and then I make the actual, first I prototype the simple version. This was done right here in, let's see, this might be actually not the scripted version. This might be the one that got programmed for the video. But this was in March, which means that it was way back over here. Let's see, yeah, version 1.0, March 8th. Okay, so between March 8th and March 27th is when I was flushing out the script for this. So let me close this one. And let's see. Here we're going to open the actual simple EQ script. So I do these all as Git repositories. So here we go, March 23rd. This is where I started figuring out what I was going to do. And basically the way this process works is I will create my initial repository, and then I will start adding individual parts of it. I will look at my original code, and I will build the plugin, and then I will go back and start filling in what the instructions are. So the way that works for this simple multiband comp, which let me just show you where this is right now. If I switch over to audio plugin host, right now in the script, I'm just using the standalone editor. That's this thing right here. Not the standalone editor. I'm using the generic editor because so far the only thing that we have accomplished is implementing all of the DSP. So all of the DSP is done, and the next thing we're going to create is the GUI. This is what the final product is going to look like for that. Okay, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so let me go back over to Fork. So the way this works is I will say, all right, let me come up with my roadmap first, and I'm going to produce that with, I'm going to figure that out using, I'm just going to create a text file, and I'm going to say, okay, here's the stuff I want to cover. Here are the parts of it. Let's figure out a good order to go through all of these steps. So the first thing is like, all right, let's figure out, let's do, product setup and configuring a way that we can conveniently develop and test and modify our plugins. So that's, that's step one. And so I come up with a workflow for that. So setup script. So this is where I say, I'm actually going to script out every single part of this process, and I'll go through, I'll create my outline. Basically, this is the outline here, and then I'll start breaking down what each individual step is. And mind you, I'm just planning all this out. I've created my script. I haven't actually performed it and executed yet. I've done these setup videos a few times, so I'm able to just script this out without actually having to go through it and figure out where are the parts that I'm not quite sure how to redo something. I remember how it goes. I actually need to do it this way. I've done these so many times that I have it basically memorized, which is kind of cool. But every time they get a little bit better, there's a little bit more information, a little bit more detailed, a little bit easier for you, the viewer. Okay, so that's step one. I will have written the script for this setup part, which is basically, here's how to set up the environment. Here's how to set up the producer to make the project. We're going to set up a repository. Then we're going to set up the things we need so we can run our plugin. And then I'm going to do that on both Mac and Windows. So basically double duty. So the script itself is like, hey, in these 15 minutes, we're going to cover how to get up and running on Mac. And then if you're a Windows user, just skip ahead 15 minutes. And then in this next chunk, I'm going to show how to do it for Windows users. Once we're all set up, then it's all going to be, everybody's going to be looking at the same code, and we're going to be all doing the same things because it's just write code, run it, and we will have configured the thing that runs it to do it all automatically for us. So we only have to focus on running the code. Okay, so then once I finish that, it's like, all right, we're going to flush out the DSP. So I go back to my original project, which in this case is the multi-band compressor, and I say, all right, what parts of this do I actually want to put in the in this simplified version? And then I go and I develop the simplified version. So that is over here under, let's see, let me go to project 12. That's down here, project 12, PFM project 12. Now project 12 started out as the simplified version. That's what all of this is right here. This is all the simplified version. Separate files refactor, simple multiband GUI, and then simple multiband GUI, simple multiband compressor, all right? And then we've got a couple fixes here. And then from here, this is where I said, all right, I'm done with the simple version. Let me turn this one into this one. Let me take this feature set here and blow it up. Okay, and that's what happens in the rest of this particular repository. I'm just adding in a ton of code, dynamic filter bands, draggable crossovers, mid-side processing, separate left, separate right processing, that sort of thing. And basically what happens is I say, all right, let me look through this code base and let me just start writing down all of the things that need to happen for this DSP to be completed. And it's like, okay, once I get my list, I'm like, all right, I think this seems like a good roadmap. Let me start working through it. And if I go over here to the actual script, you can see that all right, so the first thing I do if I look at my thing is like, all right, we're going to provide a brief overview to the code layout. Let me turn this off real quick. We're going to provide a brief code overview to the layout. So I'm like, all right, let's set up the initial project. Let's set up the initial script. And then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over this code. We're going to go over this overview. All right. So the way this works is I create my initial instructions and then I create a branch. And in this branch, I add all of the steps that I want to talk about in this particular part. For example, let me show you this, the parts of an audio plugin, step 1 through 4. This is basically what's going on right here for this part of the tutorial. Provide a brief code layout overview. All right, so I'm just going to check this out. Now in Xcode, just wait for this to go over here. I'm going to wait for this to check out. Check out commit. There it goes. Okay, so what happens in Xcode is I've got all this text that I've written in this particular commit with all these different parts. And the way I keep track of what's going on is I use pragmas in the code. So basically, when I go to actually shoot this tutorial, what I will do is I will just check out this commit And I'll say, all right, it says steps 1 through 4. Okay, so let me go into Xcode. Now that the source code in Xcode actually shows this, the state of the project at this point, it has this source code, which is the summation of all of these code changes here. So I'm going to go, okay, step 1 is where I want to look. So then I'll go up to step 1. And then I've got my script. And I just start reading the script. And if the script calls for whiteboard stuff, that's all in there. If it calls for me doing things on the screen, that's all in there. And I just start going through the steps. So here's step number 2 right here. It says step 1, let's navigate to the create editor function. So we'll go over here and I'll say, all right, this is where step 3 is. And then this is where I say, we're going to comment out this line that returns the custom editor. That's what's going on right here. And instead, we're going to use this generic audio processor editor, right? So basically, there's no questions to me about what I am going to be doing in this video. Okay, and then it's like, all right, what happens after I do step number 3? Because if you remember, this particular part has 4 steps. And then it's like, all right, here's everything I'm going to say. All right, cool. So then the next thing that I will do is I will go, once I finish a step, all right, I'll just mark myself as done, and I'll say, all right, cool, this is done. All right, let's go to the next one, which is to create the APVTS and the 4 parameters to control a basic compressor. So, and then I will go program it, put it on a branch, commit it, and merge it, and remove the steps. So that's what's going on here. You can see that I merged this particular branch, and then I removed the steps, which means if I check out this particular commit, go take a look right here. All of my instructions are gone. And the only thing that's going on here is we have this commented out custom editor, and we're returning the generic one, which leaves this project in a clean code state. So that way, when it's time for me to start working on the next one, I can just, when it's time to actually perform this script, I can just check out this commit. And all of the steps are there. All right, here's step 1. And I can just jump to any of these steps as needed because they're all indexed with these pragma marks. Same for over here, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And it makes it really easy for me to organize how things are going. Now, the downside is that for this to work, what I have to do is first, I have to create the actual plugin itself. That's what's going on here, right? I actually had to create the simple multiband comp. And then I have to go back and say, all right, let me look at this finished project. That's over here. I go over here, that's over here. Let me put this on this window so you can see what's going on. I'll make this a little bit bigger. I actually have to look through all of this code and figure out, okay, what's going on where, and in what order do I want to convey this information to the, to the people that are going to watch this video. What's the best order that I can explain this stuff in so it's easy to follow and really simple? All right, and once I've done that, once I've figured that out, and that's the whole point of coming up with this outline first, then I can start to actually script it. So I'm going to jump ahead to the end of to where I am currently with this simple multiband comp. These are all the steps for the DSP stuff, which is cool. You can see there's a lot going on. I've been working on this since October 4th. Basically, this week is when I started it. I'm just trying to, bang it out, get it done. I'm putting in a lot of time. Here I started at night. Here I started doing stuff. Let's see what's going on here. All right, here I started at 11 a.m. on the 5th, and I did a bunch of stuff all the way up until, let's see, when did I stop? I stopped here at 1:30 a.m. the next day. All right, and then I came back again at 1 o'clock and worked all the way until earlier this morning at 2 a.m. So I've been working on this script for about 2-3 days maybe. I know I posted on Twitter saying, hey, this is what I'm working on this week. I'm trying to get this tutorial done. And I've completed all of this, completed all of the DSP side of things. So I'm at the stage with this tutorial where I am going to start creating the GUI. Again, if I go back to, this is currently turned off. Let me run this. Well, let me go to where I am. All right. Check this out. Run this. Okay. We'll just wait for this to pop up real quick. So again, like I've already created the final product, and right now I'm just going through all of the code that created this thing and figuring out what's the best order to do it. And we're going to turn this into this. So right now what I want to do is actually show this process. The first where I am in the project is, or in this particular course is, adding global controls to the GUI. That's the first thing we're going to do. Basically, I'm adding, oops, that's the wrong. I'm adding this row of controls right here. The input trim, low, mid, X over, mid, high, crossover, output trim. I'm adding these 4 sliders to a generic GUI. So I'm going to walk you through the process of what actually happens when I go to script this stuff out. Because again, it's like I got to create the base plugin, then I got to create the script, which breaks down that actual final product into discrete steps, which are easy to follow and easy to understand. And then I actually have to go back and perform it. And then I got to go back and edit all the footage. And that's what ends up, that's why that simple EQ tutorial video is as good as it is, because I didn't just make it up as I go along. There's a lot of planning, there's a lot of revision, there's a lot of figuring it all out before I actually start shooting it. And then when I do shoot it, trying to put the polish on it and make it as high quality as possible, because who wants to watch a tutorial that is missing information or is, like the presenter is just kind of fumbling their words and doesn't know what they're trying to say, and you're left with a lot of like, what did this person mean when they said that? Nobody wants to deal with that. So I'm trying to put out something that's much higher quality than that. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the process of tackling, if I go over here, tackling this thing right here, global controls, okay? That's the first thing we're going to do. So I'm here, I'm on the master branch where I have removed steps from where I created this GUI roadmap. And the first thing I'm going to do is create a branch, which is, let's see. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to quit that, and I'm going to say, all right, the first thing we're doing is this. So how do I want to break this down? If I look at that GUI one more time, if I look at this GUI, we're trying to make this thing. We want to make this global controls. Okay, I think the easiest way to do this is to first create some dummy components that are just going to have generic colors so I can figure out the placement of these things, right? We've got this big component right here, this big component right here, and then this big component right here. So we're going to use placeholders for that. Okay? So I will go over here and I say, all right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to create some placeholders. So let's go over to the editor, and I'm just going to create a placeholder component. And I want it to be able to be visually distinctive. If I give them all the same color, you won't be able to tell what's going on. So I know I'm going to do a paint function. And I know I'm going to need to basically customize the color that gets painted in this paint function. So, and again, I haven't figured out how I'm actually going to present this to you, the viewer. I just know that this is what I'm going to do. So I'm like, all right, I know I'm just going to do g.fill all custom color. Kind of using some stuff that I haven't actually declared yet. So I'll declare that next. Juice color, custom color. And I'm like, okay, cool. I want it to be randomly generated every time we construct one of these. So I need a constructor to do that. And then I can do juice random R, and then custom color equals juice color, and then I can just randomly generate. I can do like R dot next int. I think that's what it is. And because the autocomplete is going pretty slow, I'm going to move this over to the CPP file, placeholder, like that. I'll just put that here. So autocomplete starts acting like it's supposed to act. Placeholder. Whoops. And then I can go juice random R. And then I can do custom color equals juice color. and I want these. Let's see. So then I will do r.nextInt with the max range of 255, and we'll just do that 3 times. And now if I build that, it should not produce any errors. It might produce warnings, or it may say it's an ambiguous constructor. All right, cool, build succeeded. All right, great. So I'm like, all right, I know this is gonna be something going on here. So I'm gonna start adding my pragmas. Pragma mark step underscore, because I haven't given it a number yet. I'm not sure what order I'm gonna actually do these in. I'm still trying to figure out what do I want to have happen in this project. So let me see, I need to go to where the editor is created, because we're going to use our non-custom editor. Comment that out, put that there. All right, and then I'm going to go here and give myself 3 placeholders. If I go back to that simple the simple multiband compressor, the final one, I know that there's 3 of them, and let's see, I'm gonna make this bigger too. I'm gonna do 600 by 500. We'll try that out. All right, so now I can do placeholder, and I'll say analyzer, or no, there's like the control bar at the top, analyzer, then there's the global controls, and then there's the band controls. All right, so I've got 4 placeholders, okay? All right, and I'm like, okay, I've got those placeholders. Let me add those. Add and make visible. Control bar. Let me do this for all 4 of these, all of these dummy components. Analyzer, global controls, and band controls. All right. And now I can go resize them and then test this out. And again, I still haven't figured out. I still haven't figured out how I want to actually script this out. So let's see. I know I need to resize these. So should I do flexbox? I know I want the control bar at the top, which has the analyzer enable, and the power button that should be like 30 pixels tall. So I will do auto bounds equals get local bounds. I can do control bar dot set bounds, and I'll say bounds dot remove from top 30. All right, so if we run this, I'm gonna see just a randomized color at the top of this plugin window. Oh, and actually I'm gonna switch to the standalone build, because there's no need to launch, since we're doing GUI stuff, there's no need to launch Audio Plugin Host and all of those other plugins for this, which simplifies things a bit. Okay. So this is the first time I'm actually seeing this. All right, so there's my blue bar at the top. All right, that looks good. And now I know I want my analyzer.setBounds, and I will do bounds.remove from top. Maybe I'll do like, let's see, I got 500. Right now I'm at 470, so maybe I'll just do, this is gonna be 250, and then I'll split the other 2 in half. I'll do global controls.setBounds. Bounds.remove from top, bounds.get height, half of it, like that, and then let's see, band controls.setBounds, bounds. All right, so the analyzer is 250, and then the global controls and the band controls are the same size. All right, so that's pretty cool. Let's see, let's run the actual plugin version. And again, I still have not figured out how I want to actually voice this and script it and say it to you. So that's the next thing I have to do. All right, and let's see if this is like pretty close in size. All right, it's pretty close in width, 600 by 500, that's pretty good. All right, and I can see here that my analyzer needs to be a little bit shorter. And then maybe I want this one to be a little bit taller, So what I might do is I may just go over to, the original script, simple MB comp, and I may just go look at the editor and see what size I actually ended up using. which here is 600 by 500. I'll say, okay. So I was right in just, guessing that. And then down here in this resized function, I'm doing a lot of flexbox stuff. So I may just copy this and change the names here. The issue is like my analyzer button and my global bypass button are not in a separate component. They're just like freestanding. So there's that. Like I have to figure out, okay, do I want to do it that way, or do I want to have like this global controls thing? So let's see, my perform layout. Okay, so my band controls is 137, so I'll use that. Band controls, I'll just do bounds.remove from bottom 137. Let's go back over here. Again, I'm still just figuring out, what's the best way I want to, present this stuff. Okay, global controls. And here I'm actually using a height differential. So I'm just saying, give me 23% of the height of the component. So, and then my threshold display is whatever's there is left. And then I'm actually making this top one be 32, not 30. So let's do that. I like this. We'll make this 32. We'll remove this from the bottom. And then I'll make this 230. All right, and then this means this is whatever is left over. Like that. Okay, so a little bit more room, a little bit less room in the analyzer. And this should be pretty close. That's pretty close, so I would leave it like that. Maybe I would make the analyzer 220, something like that, and get that to be a little bit high, to be close to the right size. Again, these are just the placeholders. So this would be like the first thing that we're figuring out. Whoops, I need to leave that open. Save, quit. I'll make this 220. And we'll just check it one last time. All right, so cool. I've got my components placed. And now I am going to actually figure out the steps that I want to do this. So the first thing I always do is say, all right, here's what we're going to do in the very beginning. And I come up with my scripts like, I'll do something like, all right, the first thing we're going to tackle in the roadmap is the global controls. Let's see, let me go back over here. And I'll be showing this on the screen. I'll say the global controls are the input trim and all this stuff, and I'll basically give a description about this stuff. And I'll say, now I want to use placeholders because I don't know exactly where I want these on the screen. So the first thing we're going to develop is a placeholder component. Right, so like insert description of global controls showing finished product. And the first thing we need to develop, because I'm going to adjust all of these sentences that I'm going to say so it's easy to understand. And basically the reason that I'm doing these things in this particular order is explained to whoever is watching this. I'm not sure what size I want my different GUI components to have. So I'm going to use placeholder components that I can, that will show me the sizes I've set. These are dumb components that only draw a single color. And let's see, then I would say the good thing about this approach is that once I've dialed in their placement, when I finish developing the real component, its screen position is already locked in, and I don't have to futz with positioning it. And then I will start talking through, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to declare a component. I want to use a custom color. And I'll say stuff like, let's declare a, whoops, let me spell that right. declare a custom component. And I'll use the voice to text thing, which I don't even know if I can do that here. Maybe it will let me. Ah, very cool. All right, so I'll use the voice to text thing. Let's declare a custom component. The way this component is going to work is that it's just going to draw a single color, period. And this single color is going to be defined when the component is constructed, period. It's going to be randomly generated, but it will never change once it has been configured. Something like that, and I'll kind of organize it so it's like, okay, each line means I'm going to add a little bit of a pause. I'll change some words around and whatnot. This color is going to be randomly generated, but it will never change once it has been configured. And then I'll say, all right, so to do that, we need to have a custom color member variable. In order to have a static color that is drawn by our custom component, we need to have a member variable that will hold this color. Right, so I'll come back to these sentences and say, what's a simpler way that I can say that? And I'll just keep revising these and getting it dialed in. And I know that this is going to be step number 2. This is going to be step number 3. Assumably this has not been written yet because I'm on step number 3. But for me, while I'm writing this script, this code is all here. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to do this. So, and if you remember earlier, what I actually did was I was like, okay, this is just going to paint a static color, so I'm going to just define an imaginary variable that I haven't declared yet and just say we're just going to paint all of this. That may not be what I actually do in the code or in the script itself. So let's see. I'm going to change this to say I want this component to only draw one color every time it is repainted, so I need to give it a member variable. Next, let's paint that member variable in our paint function. All right, that's nice and simple, so I'll get rid of this. And then I'll say, and we'll go up here. Here's step 4. Let's declare our paint function and just fill the whole thing with our custom color. All right, the next thing to do is to initialize our custom color with some random value. To do that, we need a constructor. All right, and if the voice to text is acting up, then I'll try to do it a few times. We need to initialize our custom color in our constructor so it is only configured once. All right, that's kind of an awkward sentence, so I'll say, let's use our constructor to initialize our custom color. All right, basically the information I'm trying to provide is I want to make it as concise as possible, and then I want to make it as concise as possible while also as easy to understand as possible. But basically, the point of all this is to say, like, I'm doing this for this reason, and this is the result I'm going to get from it. That's basically what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that as concisely as possible. Okay, so let's use our constructor to initialize our custom color. So step number 5, it's like, let's declare this period. And because the autocomplete is not responding as quickly as I'd like in this header file, I'm going to define it in the CPP file. Let's go over to the editor CPP file. So I'm writing myself all of these notes that explain. It's based like in the last video, the simple EQ video. In the simple EQ video, people were telling me hey, it was hard to tell which file you were editing because you didn't let us know which ones. So I'm taking that feedback and I'm going to say, we're going to jump over here. We're going to jump to this part. We're going to do this thing. All right, so that's step 5. This will be step 6. And I'll just break this down. All right, let's use the juice random class to randomly generate some integers that will populate the RGB values of our custom color. So I'll write a sentence like that, and then I'll say, that could be better. Let's use the juice random class to randomly generate, I don't need this word randomly, to generate some integers that will populate the RGB values of our custom color. And then I can say, I don't know, I think that could be expressed more simply. So I will revise it. Oops. So I will revise this and say something like, we can use the juice random class to produce random. Basically, I'll give the justification for the constructor that I chose to use for this color class. There is a color constructor that takes integers to define the R, G, and B values. That's a bad sentence too. So I might try this a few times and say, you know what, this is actually fine. Let's use the juice random class to generate some integers that will populate the RGB values of our custom color. And then I'll say, and then after I'm done doing that, I'll say, okay, cool. Let's give ourselves some placeholder components and position them on the screen. Next. Head on over to our editor. I need to give myself more time. Head over to the editor class and let's add some placeholders. Declaration. All right, so we're on step number 6. So we'll go down here. Step number 7. I'm going to break up the display into. I'm going to break up the editors into 4 sections. The very top will feature the analyzer bypass and power buttons. Below that will be the actual spectrum analyzer with the part that shows the threshold as well as the gain reduction. Then below that is the global controls. And finally, we have the actual compressor band controls at the bottom. All right, that's pretty concise. I might show an on-screen thing. Let's declare 4 instances of the placeholder and give them appropriate names. And I'll add a comment after. Let's add these to our display in our editor's constructor. I'm going to go over here to step 8. Let's use the add and make visible. Oops, I'll go over here. I'm going to rechange that sentence. We need to add and make our child components visible if we want to be able to see them. And next, we need to actually give our editor some size. So what I might do is say, you know what, I'm not going to set the size yet. I want to change this to actually be, I'm going to leave this at 400, 300. Set size 400, 300. Right, I will say, once we get these relatively positioned, we'll change the size of the editor. So this sentence right here, once we get these relatively positioned, is kind of indicating that I'm going to use relative positioning. So if I run this right now, it's going to look kind of funny because our band controls and the global controls will be pretty small. All right, like this doesn't, that, you know, there's the top one, there's the analyzer, and now the controls are just totally gone. So I may say, you know what, we need to give ourselves more room. Oops. So I'm going to get rid of that sentence and say, you know what, let's give ourselves a little bit more room and make our editor a bit wider and a fair bit taller. I'm going to go with 600 by 500. All right, so I'll do that. Do 9. And then I'll say, all right, here we go. Let's do size 10. Step number 10. And then I'm going to start talking about, I know I want this control bar at the top, why it's going to be the way it is, what I'm going to put in it. So for the control bar at the top, I want to have the analyzer power button on the left and the compressor global bypass button on the right, period. I'm going to make these sit within a component that's 32 pixels tall. So I'm going to start there. Let me get the local bounds. Whoops, why did that get hidden? Editor, show the assistant editor. Let me get the local bounds. And I'm going to set this control bar to have basically 30 to 35. I'm going to set this control bar to occupy the top 32 pixels using the remove from top function. And I don't know what happened to my sentence here because I guess I was speaking out loud, talking to the camera, and I had the voice thing, so I'll fix this. This control bar is going to occupy the top 32 pixels. Yeah, I'm not sure what I was trying to say there. Let me get the local bounds. And I want this control bar to... And now I can get a 32 pixel tall rectangle that will be the bounds of our control bar by calling the remove from top function. So that's a terrible sentence, so I'm going to see if I can find a better way to say that. There is a member function of the rectangle class which will remove a chunk from the top of the rectangle and give us that as a separate rectangle, period. It's called remove from top. And I'm going to use that here to give the control bar a bounds that is 32 pixels tall and just as wide as our component. 32 pixels tall and the same width as our editor. All right, let's see. There's a member function of the rectangle class which will remove a chunk from the top of the rectangle and give us that chunk as a separate rectangle. It's called remove from top. From top, name, it's following that that's a great function name because it conforms to the idea of naming things what they are or what they do. Let's see, conforms to the all right, I'm gonna, I'll just revise these things over and over and try to get it perfected so that way it's like easy to understand. The sentences are short. Let's call it remove top. I'm going to use that here to give the control bar a bounds that is 32 pixels tall and the same width as our editor and is positioned at the top of the screen. All right, so then I will say, okay, what? All right, so there's that. Now I'm going to do the remove from bottom. That'll go next. I'm going to position the actual compressor band controls at the bottom of the screen, period. I think I need something between 130 and 140 in terms of height. So let me try 135 as a bounds and remove it from the bottom of our bounding box. So I do 135 like that. And I say, all right, cool. And I say, all right, I'm going to dial in. Let's dial in the analyzer bounds next, period. I know I want this to be taller than the band controls and the global controls in the center, so let me choose something between 200 and 250. Let's go right down the middle and use 225. And remove that from the top of the bounding box. Again, we're just shaving, we're just removing chunks from the get local bounds rectangle. And assigning those chunks, not assigning, and using those chunks as the bounding box for our child components. And then I'll break this one down. All right, oops, let me do that over. Okay, we removed a small sliver from the top, which was the control bar of 32 pixels, which was for the control bar. And for this, I would say use hand gestures. Then we removed a chunk from the bottom for the actual compressor band controls. Then we removed a larger chunk for the analyzer. And that leaves us with a rectangle that will be used for the actual global controls. Let's run and test this, period. We can fine-tune the values after we see what this looks like initially. After we see what this looks like for the first time. All right, and then I will run this. And if anything looks funny, I'll go back and tweak these and adjust the script. Let's see. All right, that looks good to me. I'm going to put simple EQ over here. Save and quit. And say, okay, cool. We have created placeholders for the main parts of this GUI. Now we can dial in a custom component for the global controls. And then that'll conclude the tutorial. That'll conclude this part of the tutorial. All right, so we're on step 10. So I'm going to put this down here. Oops. And I like to make it easy for myself to know when I'm doing something and when it should be considered a new step. So this is a lot of text here, so I'm going to give each of these their own thing. Step 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, which means this is 16. All right, so then I'm like, okay, I'm happy with this. Let me read through these instructions. Let's see, step 1, here's what we're gonna do. Step 2, here's what we're gonna do. Step 3, step 4. All right, and I will just make sure that all of this is making sense. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Do I have 6? 6, yep, okay. Where's 7? There's 7. And then we got 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. All right, so 16 steps. Now I will go over to fork, and I'll say, all right, let me create a branch, placeholder components. And then, oh, you know what step I forgot? This one. That's step 1 right there. Actually, it's not step 1, it's step, let's do step, yeah, that's step 1. I'm not sure what size. Actually, no, this would be step, yeah, that's step 1. So because I don't want to rename all of these, I'll go over here and say step number 0. Now that we are tackling the editor, we can disable the generic editor and use our customized editor. Let's uncomment our custom editor and comment out the generic editor. And the voice to text stuff really helps a lot. I will say that. Okay, so step 0 through step 16. So I will name that step 0 through. And this is what happens if I, mess this up. All of these are step 1 through 10 or whatever, or step, 1 through 15 or whatever. If I mess up in the ordering, then yeah, I have to deal with that. Okay, so that's step 0, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Cool. And I'll just make sure that these are all there. All right, step 6, step 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Step 16. All right, commit. All right, here are my steps. So I can switch back to the master branch. I can merge this in. And then now I can go and remove these steps. Step 0. Let's go back over here. Step 1. Step 2. Step 3. Step 4. Step 5. Step 6. And I'm just clearing out all of these comments so that way I don't mess myself up the next time I do one of these. Or the next time I start scripting out the next step. Step 7. All right, step 8. Step 9. And then step 10. 11. 12. 13. 14. 15. 16. All right, save. Let me build that. Make sure I didn't delete any code by accident. Switch this to the standalone version. Let's build that. Let's just make sure. Yep, okay, cool. All right. And then I can say I removed all of the steps. And this gives me a blank slate for the next thing I'm going to do. Okay. So there you go. That's what goes into making one of these tutorials. Once I finish scripting out the whole thing, start to finish, that's what happens. That's what happens over here. I've got add parameters, DSP, refactoring, starting on the GUI, connecting knobs to the parameters, drawing the response curve, customizing the visuals, adding the response curve grid, adding the analyzer, then bypass buttons, and then here's just like updating stuff. I actually have to go and perform it. I gotta check out each commit, create a new project, check out each commit, read that script, and then like type it in and perform it. And then I got to go and edit it. So there's a lot that goes into these tutorials that makes them as good as they are. So I want to say thanks to everybody who checked out Simple EQ. I want to say thanks to everybody who has checked out my other courses, the Programming for Musicians, C++ Language Fundamentals, be it the trial or the actual paid course. And the people that are interested in learning this stuff and invest in themselves by hiring me to tutor them, I'm extremely grateful for that. And I hope this gives you an insight into what goes into some of these tutorials. They are not easy to put together. I'm basically coding the plugin 3 times. The first time is figuring out what to do. The second time is figuring out the order to do it in. And then the third time is actually performing it on camera. But I think in the end, it creates a really valuable product for people who want to learn this skill set. And I hope that the people that do learn this skill set from me are able to use it to, take care of themselves and take care of their families and pay all their bills and whatnot, and have a really valuable skill that a lot of people see as valuable, because it's really easy to have a skill that people just don't value. Like in my case, to just be perfectly honest, I spent so much time learning to play saxophone and to play piano and to play music and create musical arrangements and stuff, and then it stopped being valuable to the point where I had to give it up because I couldn't fund my family with it. So that's really the reason that I'm not really doing music anymore. It doesn't pay the bills. So I empathize with every musician that I know that struggled through the pandemic, and I hope they're all able to get up on their feet. Yeah, I don't miss the struggle that came with doing a gig and then not getting much money from it, and just feeling the panic that goes with not having enough money because of the career path that I had chosen at the time. So yeah, sorry, not sorry that I don't play saxophone anymore. I still miss playing it, but if I'm going to be totally realistic and honest, it's not valuable in society, which means I can't use it to take care of my family. So that's why I put so much effort into these tutorials, because these skills are valuable to society and I can use them to fund my family. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that insight into what goes into making one of these tutorial videos that gets like 330,000 views on FreeCodeCamp. In full disclosure, I didn't make any money from the FreeCodeCamp tutorial. I didn't get any ad revenue from that because I'm not part of their channel. I made the tutorial video. It took me, geez Louise, it took me like 2 weeks to shoot it. Took me like 3 weeks to script it. Took me a good 2 months to actually create Project 11. And no, longer than 2 months. Took me like 2.5 months to make Project 11. Maybe 2 or 2.5 weeks to make the Simple EQ. Another 2 to 3 weeks of making the script. And then shooting it took me a week and a half maybe. And then editing it took another week because it was 5 hours long, trimmed down 7 hours. And then it took me, it was a nightmare to render because it was such a big video. And then getting it to them took a really long time too. So in terms of time invested versus like the actual thing I got, like I did that so that I could get people, I did that course as advertisement for Project 11, and I've only had one person actually sign up for Project 11. Only of all the work I put in, that simple EQ Project 11 was a complete failure. So I'm hoping that people will appreciate this multiband comp and will want to learn what I have to offer in this. But it's a big gamble on my end in terms of like the time I'm investing versus the time. I'm investing all this time, which you just saw how long this stuff takes. Investing all this time in hopes that it will pay off in the end and people will see it as a very valuable product and as a resource. I'm not expecting it to do well. I'm hoping it does. I hope it is another 300K, 400K video on FreeCodeCamp, which drives people to me and be like, hey, I want to learn from this guy. Here, have money and I want to study with you. But you can't predict what people are going to do. So I'm just putting this knowledge out there in hopes that it is well received. Okay, I've rambled long enough and I need to continue to script the rest of this. So thank you so much for tuning in and I will see you in the next video. Look for this simple multiband compressor video. Look for it to come out. I'm hoping I can start recording it this weekend. And if I can, look for it in the next couple weeks to show up on FreeCodeCamp and show up on Gumroad under my own platform. Yeah, all right. That's enough of that. I'm going to get back to work. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video. Deuces.